Welcome, chosen ones, to this transformative journey. If you've ever felt like you're waiting for something bigger to happen in your life, then you're exactly where you need to be. In today's video, we're diving deep into divine timing, spiritual breakthroughs, and the incredible transformation that awaits you. The universe has aligned this moment for you right now, and everything you've been praying for is closer than you think. So, if you're ready to step into your divine purpose, to unlock the mysteries of your true potential, then make sure you stay with us through the entire video. It's not by accident that you're here. God's plan for your life is unfolding now, and you're about to witness miracles. There's a moment in every person's life when everything aligns, when heaven opens a door, and time itself seems to shift just for you. For those who are watching this video, this moment is not an accident. You've been drawn here for a purpose that goes beyond just hearing words on a screen. This is a divine interruption. I want you to recognize that you are at the right place at the right time. And what you're about to hear isn't a coincidence. This is a sacred encounter, a call from heaven. Many of us go through life on autopilot, waiting for things to fall into place, assuming that one day, things will just happen. But let me tell you something powerful. The divine window of acceleration is now opening for you. This is a time where everything you've been waiting for, those dreams, those prayers, the things that seemed impossible, are all about to fall into place. God is about to accelerate your life in ways that you couldn't have planned for yourself. Now, before you rush to think of how this might look, let me be clear. Acceleration is not about speeding up time. It's about divine timing and divine alignment. It's as though the clock is moving faster, and you are being positioned exactly where you need to be. What once took years, even decades, will now happen in mere months, weeks, or even days. But here's the thing. With this acceleration comes responsibility, and that responsibility begins with your ability to manage what's about to unfold. You may have heard the phrase, "When God opens a door, no one can shut it." But what if I told you that there is a time when you must walk through that door with precision and understanding? There's a specific window for divine acceleration, and right now, that window is wide open. You've been waiting, and now is the time to seize the opportunities, the breakthroughs, and the relationships that will define your next season. But there's one crucial thing you must understand before you move forward. During this time, silence will be your greatest weapon. Yes, I'm telling you to be silent. This may sound strange at first. After all, we've been taught that in times of opportunity, we must speak up, express our desires, and declare our plans. But what if I told you that in this divine acceleration window, your silence is more powerful than any words you could utter? Words are potent. They carry weight. And in this season, your words can either open doors or close them. They can either accelerate your blessings or delay them. What you say can speed up the unfolding of God's plan or slow it down. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can silence be the key to acceleration? The answer lies in the power of your tongue. The Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. What does that mean for you right now? It means that every word you speak is an active force. Words don't just fill the air, they shape your reality. When you speak too soon, too loudly, or too carelessly about your blessings, you risk attracting opposition, delays, and even distractions. Think of it like this. Imagine you are walking into a room that's filled with treasures, and someone else is trying to get through the same door. If you talk too much about the treasures you see, if you reveal your plans and share too many details, you invite unnecessary conflict and delays. The enemy is watching, waiting for an opportunity to sabotage the plans God has for you. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by tempting you to speak prematurely. In this season, your words must be guarded. You don't need to tell everyone about your dreams, your desires, your plans. Trust that God knows exactly what He is doing, and He will bring everything to fruition in His perfect timing. Remember, Joseph's dream would have taken a different turn if he hadn't shared it with his brothers too soon. His words brought opposition, which led to years of waiting and hardship. What if Joseph had remained silent until the right moment? What if he had waited for God to open the doors for him, instead of pushing them open himself? That's the power of silence. It allows you to align with God's perfect timing. It gives you the space to wait for the right moment to speak, to act, and to step forward. This divine window of acceleration is not just about what God can do for you. It's about what you are willing to hold, to guard, and to protect. In this season, your words are too valuable to waste. Guard them with your life. Let your silence work in your favor, allowing God to move on your behalf without the interference of untimely speech. This window is sacred. The acceleration you've been praying for, the breakthrough you've been asking for, it's coming. But as you wait for it, protect it. Be still and let God do the work. Trust Him to bring the relationships, the opportunities, and the blessings right into your hands. But more importantly, trust that His timing is perfect. He knows when to reveal the fullness of what He has for you, and He will do it in a way that aligns with His divine will. I know silence can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you're missing out on something, like you're supposed to be doing more. But the truth is, sometimes doing less is the most powerful thing you can do. You are not meant to rush. You are not meant to force things to happen. God is at work right now, aligning everything in your favor. And when the time is right, He will reveal everything to you. The doors will open, and the manifestation of your blessings will come at the perfect moment. Your job is to remain silent, to trust, and to wait for the divine timing that is unfolding before you. As you step into this divine window of acceleration, remember this: your silence is not a sign of weakness or inactivity. It is a strategic weapon, a divine tool that will help you preserve the blessings that are coming your way. Don't speak prematurely. Don't share your dreams with everyone around you. Allow God to move in ways that only He can. The silence you maintain will protect your destiny, accelerate your breakthrough, and ensure that you are positioned perfectly when God's favor is poured out on your life. As the divine window of acceleration opens, it's important for you to understand the power that silence holds in this critical season. When I say silence, I'm not referring to a passive waiting period. I'm speaking about an active, strategic silence. One that doesn't just involve refraining from speaking out loud, but also aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your spirit with God's will. You see, silence isn't just about keeping your mouth closed. It's about guarding your heart and mind in the midst of divine acceleration. The season you're entering now requires patience and faith, but it also requires a deep understanding of God's timing. There's a reason why the Bible says, "In quietness and trust is your strength." Isaiah 30-15. When you remain silent, you align with God's rhythm. The universe, your life, your destiny, everything is working according to His divine timing, and that timing is often different from our human expectations. Sometimes, we think that acceleration should look like an instant explosion of blessings and opportunities. But true acceleration doesn't always come in loud, dramatic ways. Often, it is subtle, it is steady, and it works behind the scenes in ways you can't fully see or understand just yet. It's like a seed that grows in the ground. When you plant it, you don't immediately see the fruit, but beneath the surface, things are happening. Roots are digging deeper, the plant is preparing to sprout, and soon enough, the first signs of life emerge. In the same way, your silence during this window of acceleration is allowing God to work deeply within you, setting the foundation for the manifestation of your dreams. God is positioning you, aligning you with the opportunities that are about to present themselves. And the most powerful thing you can do right now is to be still and trust that He is working. The enemy will try to provoke you during this time. He will send distractions, temptations, and even people into your life to provoke you into speaking too soon, sharing too much, or acting before it's the right time. And in those moments, you must remember this: your silence is not weakness. It is strength. It's a declaration that you trust God's process. It's an acknowledgement that you are surrendering to His will, and that in His perfect timing, He will reveal what's next. You may feel the urge to defend yourself, to explain what you're doing, to tell everyone about the breakthrough you believe is coming, but this season requires you to hold your peace. You don't need to tell everyone what God is doing in your life just yet. Keep your plans close to your heart. When you speak too early, when you share too much, you risk drawing unwanted opposition into your life. The enemy loves to hear our plans because it gives him an opportunity to interfere, to provoke reactions, and to delay God's timing. But if you remain silent, you leave no room for the enemy to gain access to your breakthrough. Think of it this way: silence is a protective barrier around your destiny. When God begins to open doors for you, when He begins to reveal opportunities and divine connections, there will be forces seen and unseen that will attempt to derail you. This is why silence is so important. In your silence, you are allowing God to protect the process. You are guarding the sanctity of the work He is doing in your life. The enemy cannot interfere with what you keep sacred, and when you remain silent, you keep your promises, your destiny, and your future wrapped in divine protection. But the enemy is crafty, and he will try to provoke you in different ways. He will send people to question your plans, to ask you where you're going, to challenge your decisions. He may use guilt or frustration to bait you into responding, to try to get you to speak out of turn. This is when the strength of your silence becomes a powerful weapon. Silence in the face of these provocations shows that you are not moved by what you see or hear. You are anchored in God's peace, in His timing, and in His power. There is also the internal struggle of silence. There will be moments when the pressure of acceleration feels overwhelming. You may feel like you need to act, like you need to do something to make things happen faster. The world will tell you that you must constantly push, chase, and hustle to get what you want. But God's way is different. His way is one of peace, trust, and rest. The true power of silence is not in the absence of words, but in the strength that silence gives you to rest in His presence. You see, this season is not about striving, it's about aligning. Your actions in this period must be guided by faith, not by anxiety or urgency. The temptation to rush, to push forward prematurely, will be strong. But you must resist it. This window of acceleration is not about forcing things to happen. It's about allowing God to align everything perfectly for you. And the more you trust in His timing, the more you will see His hand move. In the waiting, in the silence, God is refining your heart. He's preparing you for what is to come, strengthening your character, and increasing your capacity to handle the blessings that will soon overflow in your life. The silence forces you to go deeper into your faith, to trust more fully in God's plan, and to surrender your desires to His perfect will. And as you do that, you will be amazed at how quickly the acceleration comes. It will be like the floodgates opening, and what you've been waiting for will come to you faster than you ever imagined. But before that acceleration can happen, before that breakthrough can come, there must be a season of silence. This is where you are now, a place of holy quietness, where God is preparing you, positioning you, and getting everything in order for what's next. It's uncomfortable, it's challenging, but it's necessary. Trust the process, and trust that God is working in the silence to prepare you for the manifestation that is just around the corner. Remember, silence is not a passive state. It's an active choice to align yourself with God's perfect timing. In this season of acceleration, your silence is powerful. It is your shield, your protection, and your strength. Guard your words, guard your heart, and allow God to unfold His plan in His perfect timing. As you move forward in this season of divine acceleration, there's something crucial that you need to understand. The enemy has been watching. He knows your weaknesses. He understands your desires, and he knows the perfect moments to attack. You've been waiting for your breakthrough, but the enemy doesn't want you to step into it smoothly. He wants to stop you, delay you, and distract you from walking into the fullness of what God has planned for you. But here's the truth. His tactics are predictable. If you understand his strategy, you can avoid his traps and keep moving forward without delay. One of the most powerful weapons the enemy uses against us is the tactic of premature exposure. And it is in this critical moment that the strategy of silence becomes not just important, but absolutely necessary. In this chapter, we're going to explore the enemy's plan to provoke you into reacting too quickly, to speak before it's time, and to expose your plans and blessings prematurely. Understanding this strategy is key to protecting your destiny and ensuring that you don't fall into the traps the enemy has set. Think about this. When you're on the verge of a breakthrough, when God is about to open doors, you can feel it in your spirit. There's an excitement, a sense of anticipation, and a drive to tell others about what you're expecting. And it's in these very moments of vulnerability that the enemy swoops in, trying to provoke you to speak too soon. He will push your buttons. He will create situations that provoke an emotional reaction. And he does this because he knows that your words are powerful, and when you speak prematurely, you risk delaying your breakthrough or giving him access to interfere in your process. But why does he do this? The enemy's goal is simple. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to steal your peace, kill your momentum, and destroy the future God has prepared for you. One of the most effective ways he does this is by provoking you to reveal your plans before they are fully aligned with God's timing. The enemy understands that premature exposure opens the door to unnecessary conflict, confusion, and resistance. He knows that if he can get you to react or speak too soon, you'll invite opposition into your life that wasn't necessary in the first place. Let's break down how this works. In every season of acceleration, there is a strategic timing that God has set. It's a perfect plan, unfolding step by step. But when we speak before the time is right, when we share our plans or our breakthroughs with others prematurely, we open the door to unnecessary conflict. It's like announcing to the world that you're about to walk into a major opportunity before it's fully secured. This creates space for the enemy to send in distractions, doubt, and fear. People may begin to question you, doubt your ability, or even actively work against you without even realizing it. Premature exposure invites these spiritual forces to interfere with what God is doing. The enemy knows that your words are a key to your manifestation. That's why he works tirelessly to provoke you into speaking out of turn, to share too much, to let your excitement spill over in ways that could open doors to confusion or opposition. He will send people into your life, those who are well-meaning, yet unaware of the spiritual dynamics at play, to ask questions, to demand answers, and to push you into revealing what you've been praying and believing for. When the enemy sees that you're on the verge of your breakthrough, he gets desperate. He knows that when the doors open, they open wide, and there's no turning back. So, his strategy is to delay, disrupt, and confuse. He'll use anything, relationships, fears, doubts, to provoke you into speaking too soon. And when you speak out of excitement, frustration, or even anxiety, you give him access. You open the door for him to influence your words, and your words carry weight. Just like a spark can start a fire, your words can start a chain reaction, and what you reveal prematurely can bring about unnecessary delays. This is why, in this season, silence becomes your most powerful weapon. When the enemy tries to provoke you, when you feel the urge to explain yourself or share your excitement with others, you must hold your peace. It's not about being passive or avoiding the truth, it's about protecting the precious thing God is doing in your life. There's a time for speaking and a time for silence. And when you are in a season of divine acceleration, the time for silence is now. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to convince others of what God is doing. The more you speak, the more you invite scrutiny, resistance, and delay. But when you remain silent, you allow God to work without interference. Your silence shields your plans from premature exposure, and it gives God room to work in his timing. The moment you stop speaking about your breakthrough, the moment you hold your peace, You place your trust completely in God's timing and His ability to bring things to pass. But let's talk about how the enemy goes about this. His strategy often begins with observation. He watches you. He studies your weaknesses. He waits for the perfect opportunity to provoke you. And once he knows what buttons to press, he'll do just that. The enemy will use people, often people who are close to you, to get you to reveal your plans. They may ask innocent questions, seem curious, or even try to support you. But their words can cause you to react emotionally. And when that happens, you're one step closer to exposing what you should be guarding. You see, the enemy's tactic is not always about direct confrontation. Sometimes it's the little things. Sometimes it's the small pressures, the seemingly harmless conversations, the well-meaning comments that get you to reveal too much. He knows that once you speak, you've let your guard down. And once your plans are exposed, they become vulnerable to the forces of delay and resistance. In this season, you must be wise. You must recognize the enemy's strategy before it unfolds. Don't allow yourself to be caught in emotional reactions or conversations that take you off course. Keep your plans between you and God until the right time. God knows the perfect moment to reveal everything. He knows when the door will open, and He knows when you're ready to walk through it. Trust that He will reveal it when it's time, and until then, remain silent. Silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's a strength that will protect you, guide you, and help you move forward without unnecessary delays. As we continue to explore the enemy's strategy of premature exposure, it's vital to understand the subtle ways in which he works. It's easy to think of the enemy's attacks as blatant, but often, they are quiet, insidious, and designed to provoke a reaction from us when we're least prepared. The more we understand how he operates, the better equipped we are to protect our destiny and stay aligned with God's timing. One of the most dangerous things the enemy can do is get us to speak too soon about what God is doing in our lives. The enemy thrives on premature exposure because it gives him access to your plans. When your dreams, ideas, and breakthroughs are exposed before they are fully developed or secured, it opens the door for distractions and attacks. He understands that if he can get you to reveal too much too soon, you'll face opposition that wasn't necessary. This is why silence, as we discussed before, becomes a form of spiritual protection. It's not about keeping secrets for the sake of hiding. It's about safeguarding your plans and positioning yourself for the perfect timing of God's release. Think back to the story of Joseph, one of the greatest biblical examples of premature exposure. Joseph's dreams were powerful. They were prophetic, and they revealed God's future plan for him. But Joseph, excited and eager to share the promise, revealed those dreams to his brothers too soon. Instead of finding support and encouragement, Joseph's words brought jealousy, hatred, and betrayal. His own brothers, who should have been the first to cheer him on, sold him into slavery. This premature exposure set off a chain of events that caused Joseph to go through years of hardship and testing. What if Joseph had waited? What if he had kept the dream in his heart until God revealed the right time? The enemy knew that Joseph's dreams had the potential to change his life, so he worked through Joseph's excitement, causing him to speak too soon. The enemy knew that the longer Joseph could keep his dreams hidden in his heart, the longer he would remain untouchable. It's only when Joseph learned to wait, when his words became more guarded and his focus became more aligned with God's will, that the pieces started falling into place. The silence he learned to maintain was crucial to his future success. Joseph's story isn't just about dreams coming true. It's about learning the lesson that God's timing is far greater than our own. The premature revelation of God's plan can attract unnecessary delays, obstacles, and opposition. But when you keep the vision quiet and wait for God to bring it to pass in His timing, the results are far more powerful. Jesus himself gives us another powerful example of the importance of silence. When he was brought before Pilate, he chose not to answer accusations and questions that could have sparked his defense. Instead, he remained silent. In his silence, Jesus was fulfilling prophecy. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth." Isaiah 53:7. Jesus' silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was a strategic decision to align with the Father's will and to allow the plan of salvation to unfold without interruption. Imagine if Jesus had defended himself or tried to explain his mission before Pilate. It could have led to confusion, delay, and even a derailment of the plan God had set into motion. But because Jesus remained silent at the right moment, he fulfilled God's will and allowed the divine purpose to unfold with precision. His silence was a weapon against the enemy's attempts to provoke a premature move. It was his submission to God's perfect timing. David's story is yet another example of the power of silence. When David was running from Saul, he had multiple opportunities to kill Saul and end the chase. His men urged him to act, but David restrained himself. He chose silence and restraint, even when he had every right to defend himself. In 1 Samuel 24:10, David says, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." David knew that God's timing, not his own, was the key to his victory. David's restraint was his strength. He trusted that God would bring the victory, that God would vindicate him in his own time. In the moments when it seemed like David should speak or act, he chose to be silent. And in doing so, he positioned himself perfectly for the moment when God would elevate him to the throne. If David had acted prematurely, he might have lost his opportunity or put himself in a position of opposition. But because he trusted God's timing, he was positioned to fulfill his purpose. There's a lesson here for all of us. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our breakthrough requires constant action and constant speaking. But sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is wait in silence, trust in God, and allow Him to work on our behalf. God is not in a rush, and neither should we be. Premature exposure, speaking too soon, and acting out of urgency can throw us off course. But silence, at the right time, can open doors that no one can shut. In the same way that David and Jesus used silence as a strategy, so can you. Your silence isn't a sign of inactivity or weakness. It is a sign of your trust in God's plan. It's a sign that you believe in His timing, in His control, and in His ability to orchestrate everything in your life for good. When you choose to remain silent and allow God to work behind the scenes, you are aligning yourself with His divine plan. But silence doesn't just protect your future, it prepares you for it. When you remain silent, you allow yourself to reflect, to think, and to align your heart with God's will. You guard your heart and spirit from distractions, from emotional outbursts, and from the enemy's tactics that try to provoke you. Silence brings clarity, and in that clarity, you begin to see the path God has laid out for you. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should never speak or share your dreams with others. There is a time to speak and a time to be silent. But in the moments when you feel the pressure to act or speak prematurely, remember Joseph, Jesus, and David. Let their stories remind you that silence, in the right moment, is the key to fulfilling your destiny. In the spiritual journey, there's an undeniable truth. Timing is everything. When God calls you into a season of divine acceleration, it's not just about moving quickly, it's about moving with precision and wisdom. And sometimes, the best strategy isn't about doing more, but doing less. Specifically, in this season, the power of silence will be your most valuable weapon. But silence, as we will explore in this chapter, is not a passive act. It is an active decision to align with God's timing and purpose. In this part of the chapter, we will reflect on several biblical figures who used silence as a powerful strategic tool in their journey of faith. These examples aren't just stories, they are blueprints for how we can position ourselves for breakthrough. The Bible offers us rich insights into how, at crucial moments, these leaders chose silence. trusting that God's hand would move when it was the right time. Let's start with the story of Joseph. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. But what stands out about Joseph's experience is how he learned the value of silence in the process. Joseph's story begins with a dream, a vision from God. God gave Joseph a picture of his future, a future where his family would bow down to him. The dream was powerful and prophetic, but what Joseph didn't understand at the time was that the dream was only part of the process. The other part, the journey, was something he had to walk through. And this journey involved a lot of waiting, hardship, and yes, silence. Joseph was eager to share his dream with his family. His excitement and zeal were understandable. After all, this was a big, bold, divine revelation. But when Joseph shared his dream with his brothers, the result was far from what he had imagined. Instead of support or congratulations, he faced jealousy, hatred, and eventually betrayal. His brothers threw him into a pit, and eventually, he was sold into slavery. At that point, Joseph's words would have been powerless. What if, instead of telling his brothers about his dreams, Joseph had kept them to himself? What if, instead of speaking prematurely, he had trusted God's timing? Joseph's story is a clear example of how premature exposure can lead to unnecessary conflict and delay. If Joseph had waited, the manifestation of his dreams could have come much sooner, with much less opposition. But Joseph's lesson wasn't over. Even as he spent years in Egypt, imprisoned and misunderstood, his silence became his strength. Joseph learned that some dreams are too sacred to be spoken before their time. He began to understand that his calling was not something to be flaunted or defended. It was something to be trusted to God's timing. Joseph's eventual rise to power came not through forceful speech or attempts to hasten God's plan. It came when Joseph chose to remain silent, trusting that the right time would come for his dreams to manifest. His journey wasn't about how loudly he spoke or how much he tried to prove himself. It was about waiting for the appointed time. And when the time came, Joseph didn't have to defend himself. He didn't have to justify his position or his past. His rise was a testament to God's faithfulness and perfect timing. The story of Joseph reminds us that there is power in silence, especially when we are on the verge of a breakthrough. Sometimes, the best thing we can do is wait and trust that God's timing will bring our dreams to fruition. Our words, when spoken prematurely, can bring unnecessary conflict, but silence allows us to protect the sacredness of the calling God has placed on our lives. Next, let's look at Jesus' example. Jesus is the ultimate example of the power of silence, especially during the most trying moments of his life. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read about Jesus' trial before Pilate. This moment was a critical turning point, where Jesus had the opportunity to defend himself against accusations that would ultimately lead to his crucifixion. Yet, in the face of injustice, Jesus chose to remain silent. In Matthew 27-12, 1-4, we see how the chief priests and elders made false accusations against Jesus, but he remained silent. Pilate, the Roman governor, was astonished by this. "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" Pilate asked. But Jesus refused to respond. He chose silence, even when he had every reason to defend himself. Jesus' silence was not an act of weakness, it was an act of profound strength. It was a conscious decision to submit to God's will and fulfill prophecy. In Isaiah 53-7, the prophet wrote, "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth." Jesus' silence was part of the fulfillment of that prophecy. By remaining silent before Pilate, he allowed God's divine plan to unfold without interference. His silence became the path to victory, the ultimate act of obedience, and the fulfillment of his purpose. What can we learn from Jesus' example? When we face injustice, opposition, or false accusations, our natural instinct is often to speak out, to defend ourselves, to explain, or to retaliate. But Jesus shows us that sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is remain silent. It is in our silence that God can work most powerfully. Jesus trusted that his Father would vindicate him, and he submitted to God's timing, allowing God's will to be fulfilled. In the same way, when you face resistance or misunderstanding, silence can become your greatest weapon. It's not about being passive, it's about trusting that God will take care of the opposition in his timing. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is not through your words, but through your quiet trust in God's plan. By remaining silent, you're not just protecting yourself from unnecessary conflict, you're aligning with God's divine purpose and timing. Now, let's look at David's example. David, who was anointed to be king, was deeply familiar with the tension between God's promises and the reality of his circumstances. For years, David lived in fear and uncertainty, fleeing from King Saul, who sought his life. Yet, even in the face of persecution, David knew the value of silence. In 1 Samuel 24, David found himself in a cave where Saul, who had been pursuing him, entered unknowingly. David's men urged him to kill Saul and end the chase once and for all. But David refused. Even though David had been anointed as the next king, he understood that it was not his time to act. He recognized that taking matters into his own hands, even in a moment of extreme provocation, would violate God's timing. David's restraint was not weakness, it was wisdom. He knew that God's promises would be fulfilled in God's way and in God's time. By remaining silent and not taking revenge, David trusted God to handle Saul. And years later, when Saul died, David ascended to the throne, just as God had promised. David's story is a reminder that silence can be an act of faith. When we're waiting for God to fulfill his promises, the temptation to act in our own strength can be overwhelming. But like David, we must trust that God will bring about his will, even if it means waiting longer than we'd like or enduring hardship along the way. Silence becomes a sign of our trust, and it positions us for God's perfect timing. As we continue exploring the profound examples of silence in the Bible, we begin to see more clearly how powerful silence can be when used strategically. It is not just a passive act, but an intentional decision that aligns us with God's will and positions us for breakthrough. Silence is not about hiding or avoiding responsibility, it's about trusting in God's perfect timing, allowing him to reveal his plan for us when the moment is right. In this part of the chapter, we'll look at two more powerful biblical examples of how silence became the strategic move in the pursuit of destiny. Mary and Nehemiah. Let's begin with Mary, the mother of Jesus. In the Gospel of Luke, we read about how the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary with the incredible news that she had been chosen to conceive the Son of God. At first, Mary was troubled by the angel's words and the weight of the message. How could this be? How could she, a young woman, become pregnant with the Messiah? But the angel reassured her, telling her that nothing was impossible with God, and she responded with a humble, faithful, yes. Dog. After receiving this divine message, Mary did something profound. She didn't go around telling everyone what had just happened. Instead, she kept the news close to her heart. The Gospel of Luke tells us that after hearing the angel's words, Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Luke 2:19. Mary understood that there was a time for speaking and a time for silence. The news she had received was not just monumental, it was sacred. The weight of the message she had received from God required her to protect it, to hold it in her heart, and to wait for God to reveal the next steps. Imagine the pressure Mary could have felt to tell someone, to explain what had happened to her. She could have been tempted to share her miraculous pregnancy with the people around her, but instead, she chose to keep it in silence. She understood that sharing prematurely could lead to misunderstanding, judgment, or even harm. People wouldn't have believed her, and her divine assignment could have been jeopardized. But by remaining silent, she was allowing God's plan to unfold in his time, not hers. Mary's silence was a protective strategy. By guarding the divine mystery within her, she ensured that God's purpose would be fulfilled at the perfect time. It wasn't until she was about to give birth, when the time was right, that her story was revealed to the world. Mary teaches us that sometimes we need to hold things quietly in our hearts, trusting that God will reveal them when the time is perfect. Silence, in her case, was not only protection but also a demonstration of her deep faith in God's plan. Now, let's turn to the story of Nehemiah, one of the greatest leaders in the Old Testament. Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king of Persia, and when he heard that the walls of Jerusalem were in ruins, he was deeply moved and prayed for the restoration of his city. Nehemiah's response to the brokenness around him wasn't immediate action. It was prayer and silence. Before taking any steps, Nehemiah fasted, prayed, and sought God's guidance. He didn't rush into a plan. He first aligned himself with God's will. When Nehemiah finally approached the king with his request to rebuild Jerusalem, he didn't do so impulsively. He had already spent time in prayer, seeking God's favor and timing. In Nehemiah 2:4-5, when the king asked him why he looked sad, Nehemiah responded carefully, stating, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, let him send me to the city in Judah, where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it." Nehemiah's response was not a hasty plea. It was measured, thoughtful, and aligned with God's purpose. In this moment, Nehemiah was strategically silent. He could have gone to the king immediately, demanding that he be allowed to rebuild Jerusalem, but instead, he waited on God's timing. He spent time in prayer, seeking direction, and listening for God's voice. When the moment came, Nehemiah was ready, and he spoke with clarity and authority, knowing that God had prepared the way. Nehemiah's example shows us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is wait for the right moment to speak. It's not enough to just act. We must act in God's timing. Nehemiah's silence during his waiting period wasn't a passive inaction. It was an active trust in God's plan. He understood that he needed to wait for the right moment to step into his destiny. His silence protected the plan and allowed him to move forward with the confidence that God had gone before him. So, what can we learn from these examples? Joseph, Jesus, David, Mary, and Nehemiah. Each of these figures faced moments of intense pressure, but in their silence, they found the strength and clarity to move forward in God's perfect timing. Silence, in each case, wasn't about avoiding action or responsibility. It was about positioning themselves for the fulfillment of God's plan. In your own life, when faced with a breakthrough, a challenge, or a pivotal moment, it can be tempting to act impulsively, to speak your mind, or to take matters into your own hands. But silence can be your greatest strategy. When God opens doors, it's often in the quiet moments of prayer, trust, and reflection that He prepares you for what's to come. Silence allows you to align yourself with His will, to hear His voice clearly, and to step into your calling without unnecessary distractions. As we move forward in the next chapters, I want to challenge you to embrace the power of silence. It is a tool that will protect your destiny, align you with God's perfect timing, and allow His plan to unfold without interference. Silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is not passivity, it is active trust in God's process. And just like Joseph, Jesus, David, Mary, and Nehemiah, when the time is right, you will find that your silence has prepared you for the breakthrough that God has in store. As you move forward in this season of divine acceleration, it's important to recognize that the enemy won't simply stand by and let you progress unhindered. While God has opened a divine window of opportunity, the enemy will do everything he can to disrupt your journey. He knows that the moment you step into God's timing, doors will open and blessings will flow. And this is where the real battle begins, not in the external world, but in your thoughts, in your emotions, and in your responses. In this chapter, we're going to dive into the spiritual traps the enemy will use to provoke you, to get you off track, and to delay your breakthrough. These traps are designed to distract you, to get you to speak prematurely, or to react in ways that open the door to unnecessary conflict. Recognizing these traps is key to your success in this season. Understanding the tactics the enemy uses will enable you to walk through your divine window with strength, wisdom, and confidence. One of the most powerful tactics the enemy uses is emotional provocation. It often begins with a feeling, a sense of frustration, confusion, or even anger. You might be going through your day, quietly awaiting your breakthrough, when suddenly someone or something causes a disruption in your peace. It could be a comment someone makes, a challenge at work, or a personal relationship that suddenly feels out of balance. This is where the enemy moves in. He seeks to provoke an emotional reaction from you, one that will cause you to speak or act in ways that are out of alignment with God's timing. For instance, have you ever been in a situation where everything was going smoothly, but then, out of nowhere, a person said something that triggered an emotional response? You might have felt the urge to lash out, to explain yourself, or to defend your position. In that moment, the enemy has just baited you into a trap. He has used your emotions as a tool to provoke you into speaking out of turn, revealing your plans or your frustrations before the right time. And once those words are spoken, the enemy gains access to your peace and your progress. So, how do you recognize these emotional provocations before they derail your progress? It all comes down to self-awareness and emotional discipline. In a season of divine acceleration, you cannot afford to react impulsively. Emotional reactions, especially those rooted in frustration, insecurity, or anger, can open the door for the enemy to attack your breakthrough. The key is to recognize the trigger in the moment and then practice restraint. Pause before speaking. Take a moment to breathe, pray, and allow God's peace to settle over you. Remember, the enemy's goal is to provoke you into premature actions, whether it's through your words or your decisions. Your ability to remain calm, collected, and prayerful will protect your destiny. Another tactic the enemy uses is guilt. Guilt is a powerful emotional weapon because it often comes disguised as responsibility. The enemy knows that you carry a sense of duty to others, whether it's to your family, your friends, or your work. And in the midst of your acceleration, he will try to make you feel guilty about waiting or about not moving fast enough to meet others' expectations. This guilt can cause you to rush, to act before it's the right time, and to compromise on what God has instructed you to do. For example, imagine you're in a season where God has instructed you to remain silent, to protect your plans, and to wait for the right moment to speak. But then, you begin to feel the pressure from others. Perhaps they don't understand your silence or are pushing you to act before you're ready. The enemy will amplify this pressure, whispering to you, "Why aren't you doing more? Why are you waiting so long? You're letting people down. You need to act now." Guilt can cause you to feel as though you are missing your opportunity or not fulfilling your obligations. But in reality, what you are doing is protecting your divine timing. When you recognize that the guilt is rooted in the enemy's tactics, you can break free from it. You must remind yourself that God's plan for your life is far greater than anyone else's expectations. Guilt is not from God. It is a tool used to manipulate you into acting prematurely. Instead of feeling guilty, take it as a sign that you are aligning with God's will and are being obedient to His perfect timing. A third trap the enemy often uses is the bait of impatience. It's the feeling that you've been waiting long enough and that it's time to make something happen. It's that urge to take matters into your own hands, to force open the doors that seem closed, or to push through when it feels like the waiting has gone on too long. The enemy knows that impatience can derail your plans, and he will try to provoke you into rushing the process. Impatience often manifests as restlessness, anxiety, or a sense of urgency that doesn't come from God. When the enemy senses that you are becoming impatient, he will use that against you. You might feel like you need to act immediately to keep your momentum going. But true divine acceleration doesn't come through impatience, it comes through trusting God's timing. Impatience will push you to make decisions that are not aligned with God's best for your life. It will cause you to settle for what is easy or quick, rather than waiting for the perfect, divinely orchestrated plan. When you feel impatience creeping in, recognize it for what it is, an enemy tactic designed to move you off course. Take a deep breath, pray, and remind yourself that God's timing is perfect. Waiting is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of trust. And in this season of acceleration, trust is your strongest weapon. The enemy wants you to move without discernment, but the Holy Spirit will guide you to act with wisdom and peace when the time is right. Finally, one of the most dangerous traps the enemy sets is the trap of comparison. In the age of social media, it's easier than ever to fall into the comparison trap. You might look around at others and feel like they are moving faster, achieving more, or experiencing breakthroughs that you are still waiting for. Comparison leads to frustration, doubt, and a feeling of inadequacy. The enemy loves to use comparison to distract you from your own path and to make you question God's plan for your life. Comparison can also lead to premature exposure. When you see others sharing their breakthroughs, it may tempt you to reveal your own plans before they are fully realized. But this is exactly what the enemy wants. He wants you to believe that you are falling behind or that you are not good enough. In reality, your journey is unique, and your breakthrough will come at the perfect time. The success of others does not diminish the success that God has planned for you. As we continue in our journey of recognizing and overcoming spiritual traps, let's delve into practical strategies that will help you remain steadfast in this season of divine acceleration. The enemy's goal is always to provoke you, to get you off track, and to distract you from the perfect timing of God. But with the right strategies in place, you can avoid falling into his traps and stay aligned with God's will. In the first part of this chapter, we identified several traps the enemy will use, such as emotional provocation, guilt, impatience, and comparison. Now, let's focus on how you can protect yourself from these tactics and continue on the path to divine breakthrough. These practical strategies will help you stay grounded, patient, and wise as you walk through this season. One of the most effective strategies for maintaining silence and resisting emotional provocation is the 24-hour rule. The 24-hour rule is simple but powerful. When you are faced with a situation that triggers an emotional reaction or provocation, wait 24 hours before responding. Why is this effective? Because in that 24-hour period, your emotions can settle, and you give yourself the space to reflect and pray before speaking. Emotional reactions are often impulsive, and once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. By waiting a full 24 hours, you give yourself the chance to ask God for clarity, to seek counsel if necessary, and to ensure that your response is aligned with His will, not your emotions. This rule prevents you from reacting impulsively to situations that could derail your breakthrough. It gives you the time to ensure that your words and actions are rooted in wisdom, not in a knee-jerk reaction to frustration or temptation. In this waiting period, you can turn to God for guidance, allowing the Holy Spirit to give you a peaceful, measured response instead of one driven by haste. Sometimes, the enemy will use guilt or pressure to get you to speak before the time is right. You may feel compelled to defend yourself, justify your actions, or explain your decisions to others. In these moments, it's essential to have a safe response template that allows you to maintain your silence without feeling guilty or pressured to over-explain. A safe response template is a pre-crafted, simple response that you can use when you're feeling provoked, pressured, or confused. It's a gentle but firm way to maintain your boundaries and avoid saying too much. Some examples of safe responses include, "I'm still processing, but I appreciate your concern," is a 5. "I'll let you know when the time is right to share more details." "I'm trusting God's timing and will share when it's the right moment." "Thank you for your interest. I'll keep you updated when things unfold." These responses allow you to acknowledge the other person's interest or concern without overexposing your plans. They allow you to maintain your silence while still being respectful and kind. The key is to keep your words brief, non-committal, and in alignment with God's timing. By using these templates, You protect your peace and avoid the temptation to explain too much or reveal what is not yet ready to be shared. They are simple ways to keep your words guarded, ensuring that you don't fall into the trap of premature exposure. Maintaining silence requires self-discipline, especially when emotions run high. One powerful strategy is to implement physical cues that remind you to stay silent and to resist reacting prematurely. These cues are small actions or habits that help you pause before speaking. Some examples of physical cues include taking a deep breath. Before responding to someone or reacting to a situation, take a moment to breathe deeply. This will help you center yourself and bring calm to your mind and body. Touching your wrist or an item in your pocket, create a physical habit that triggers a pause. Whenever you feel the urge to speak impulsively, touch your wrist or a small item in your pocket as a reminder to hold your peace. Counting to 10. A classic strategy, but it works. When you feel the pressure to speak, count to 10 slowly. This gives you just enough time to collect your thoughts and shift your focus from reacting emotionally to responding thoughtfully. A quiet place retreat. If you are in a heated conversation or under pressure, excuse yourself for a brief walk or retreat to a quiet space. Use this time to pray, reflect, and regain your calm before responding. These physical cues act as reminders that silence is your strength in moments of pressure. They help you pause before speaking and recalibrate your thoughts and emotions, ensuring that your words align with God's purpose for your life. Another key strategy for overcoming spiritual traps is learning to recognize the warning signs that you are being baited by the enemy. The enemy is crafty, and he will often provoke you in subtle ways, drawing you into situations that threaten your peace and your alignment with God's timing. By becoming aware of the warning signs, you can stop the enemy before he has a chance to derail your progress. Here are 7 warning signs that you are being baited into premature exposure or emotional reaction. The sudden urge to respond immediately. You feel a rush to speak, to defend yourself, or to justify your actions. This urgency often comes from the enemy's attempt to provoke you into making a hasty decision. Repeated questions or comments. Someone continually asks you about your plans or presses you for details. While their intentions may seem innocent, these repeated questions are designed to provoke you into revealing more than you should, feeling the need to prove yourself. When you start to feel like you need to prove your worth or defend your choices, you are likely being baited into speaking prematurely. Unexplainable anger or frustration. When you feel a surge of anger or frustration, it often signals that the enemy is trying to provoke a reaction. This emotional state can cause you to speak or act without thinking. Being put on the spot. Someone asks you a direct question that forces you into a situation where you feel you must reveal your plans or your thoughts. This is a trap designed to force you into exposure, feeling the need to explain yourself to others. When you find yourself justifying your actions or decisions over and over, this is a sign that the enemy is trying to make you feel guilty or insecure about your choices. Internal pressure to act quickly. You feel like time is running out and you must act now. This feeling of urgency is often a tactic the enemy uses to provoke you into rushing the process before it's time. When you notice any of these warning signs, take a step back, pause, pray, and ask God for clarity. The enemy wants to rush you, but God is always patient. Recognizing these signs helps you maintain your peace and avoid making decisions that are not in alignment with God's perfect timing. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, I want to bring you into a deeper understanding of how silence, when strategically embraced, can transform your life. In the earlier chapters, we explored the importance of silence as a tool for protecting your destiny, avoiding premature exposure, and overcoming spiritual traps. But now, we are going to focus on how mastering the art of silence directly impacts your future, accelerating your divine purpose and positioning you for breakthroughs that you've long been waiting for. It's easy to overlook the power of silence. We live in a world where noise is constant. Social media, conversations, news, and even our own thoughts can create a chaotic buzz that distracts us from hearing God's voice and moving with His timing. But there is something sacred, something powerful, about choosing silence at the right time. Silence is not about retreating or withdrawing from life's responsibilities. It is about aligning yourself with God's perfect timing, creating space for His will to unfold, and positioning yourself for the manifestation of His promises. In this chapter, we will explore how mastering silence is the key to unlocking divine favor, how practicing restraint accelerates your purpose, and why silence is an active force in moving you toward your destiny. Silence is not passive. In fact, silence requires great strength, discipline, and intentionality. We often think of silence as doing nothing, as being inactive or disengaged, but true silence is an active choice, one that is made with the understanding that your words, actions, and even your thoughts have the power to shape your future. Silence is the decision to trust in God's timing rather than trying to force your own agenda. It's the decision to wait patiently for the right moment, knowing that the breakthrough you seek is on its way. Mastering the art of silence is not about simply holding your tongue, it's about aligning your heart and mind with God's will. In this season of divine acceleration, silence becomes your weapon against the enemy's distractions and your tool for protecting the promises God has placed in your heart. When you learn to embrace silence, you are practicing restraint, which is essential to your spiritual maturity. Restraint is the ability to hold back, to resist the urge to act impulsively, to speak prematurely, and to make decisions based on fear or insecurity. This kind of restraint is a reflection of your trust in God. When you remain silent, you are saying, "I trust God's timing. I trust that He is working behind the scenes. I trust that He will reveal what is necessary when the time is right." This is the essence of faith, the ability to wait patiently, to remain still, and to trust that God is aligning everything for your good. Mastering silence also allows you to move with greater clarity and discernment. When you're silent, you're not just holding your tongue, you are creating a space in your life where you can hear God's voice more clearly. Silence removes the clutter of outside opinions, distractions, and pressures, and gives you the focus to hear God's direction. In this silence, you gain wisdom. You begin to see the situation for what it really is. Your discernment sharpens, and you become more attuned to the Holy Spirit's guidance. Think about how often we act without fully understanding the situation. We speak out of turn, make hasty decisions, or react impulsively to challenges. But when we embrace silence, we open ourselves up to the peace that surpasses understanding. We allow the Holy Spirit to lead us, to reveal what we cannot see with our natural eyes, and to prepare us for the next steps in our journey. The more you practice silence, the more you will experience its profound benefits in your life. These benefits go beyond just avoiding conflict or preventing premature exposure. Silence is the key to aligning with God's perfect timing, to accelerating your purpose, and to positioning yourself for the manifestation of everything God has promised you. One of the most significant benefits of silence is that it protects your destiny. The enemy's greatest tactic is to provoke you into speaking too soon, to get you to expose your plans and desires before they are fully aligned with God's will. Premature exposure invites delay and opposition, as we've discussed. But when you choose silence, you shield yourself from the enemy's attempts to derail your progress. Silence protects what God is doing in your life. It creates a sacred space where God can move freely, without interference. Another benefit of silence is that it aligns you with God's timing. When you're silent, you are saying to God, "I will wait for your timing." This isn't just about avoiding hasty decisions, it's about actively waiting for God's direction. By remaining silent, you signal to God that you trust His process. You're not trying to force things to happen in your own strength. Instead, you're positioning yourself to receive what He has planned for you at the perfect moment. Timing is everything in God's kingdom, and silence allows you to wait for the moment when doors will open, relationships will align, and opportunities will unfold. Silence also brings peace. In a world that is constantly moving, speaking, and demanding your attention, silence brings peace to your soul. It's in the stillness that you reconnect with God. You find rest in His presence. The noise of the world begins to fade, and the clarity of God's will becomes evident. Peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of God in your life. Silence gives you the space to rest in His peace, to quiet your mind, and to allow God to speak to you. In that peace, you gain the confidence to move forward with boldness and assurance. Perhaps most importantly, silence accelerates your purpose. The longer you stay silent and trust God's timing, the faster He can move on your behalf. Silence is not a passive waiting, it's an active trust in God's plan. And when you align yourself with that plan, everything begins to accelerate. The relationships, the opportunities, and the breakthroughs that you've been waiting for begin to unfold in a way that only God can orchestrate. Silence removes the barriers, the obstacles, and the delays that come from trying to act on your own timing. When you remain silent, you make room for God to move with divine acceleration, and that's when things begin to happen quickly. In this season of divine acceleration, one of the most powerful ways you can use silence is in your prayer life. Prayer is an essential part of aligning with God's will, and sometimes the most powerful prayer is the one where you say nothing at all. We often think that prayer is about speaking about telling God our needs, desires, and requests. But silence in prayer can be just as powerful. There's a verse in Psalm 46:10 that says, "Be still and know that I am God." In this verse, God invites us into a space of quiet reflection where we can stop striving, stop asking, and simply rest in His presence. It's in the stillness of prayer that we hear His voice most clearly. It's in the silence that God can speak directly to our hearts, guiding us, comforting us, and filling us with peace. When we pray in silence, we remove the distractions of our own desires and give God room to speak. We allow Him to shape our hearts, to align our thoughts with His will, and to prepare us for the next steps in our journey. Silence in prayer isn't about asking for things. It's about listening and surrendering to God's plan. It's about being still enough to hear His voice above the noise of the world. As you continue to embrace the strategic power of silence, it's important to recognize that silence is not a void. It is an active force that shapes your journey. The more you cultivate silence, the more you will see its profound impact on your life, your decisions, and your ability to align with God's divine purpose for you. In this season of acceleration, you are stepping into a divine alignment that requires your full attention. The world will continue to shout for your attention, for your response, for your action. But silence allows you to turn down the noise and tune into God's whisper. It's in the quiet moments that God reveals what is truly important, and in this quietness, you begin to see clearly the path that He is laying before you. Silence creates the space for divine clarity and wisdom. It removes the distractions that prevent you from seeing what God has already prepared for you. When you choose silence, you are actively choosing to wait for the perfect moment, trusting that God's timing is the best timing. This trust is the foundation upon which your breakthrough is built. Silence teaches you to wait on the Lord, not in passivity, but in confidence that His plans for you are greater than anything you could plan for yourself. The longer you remain silent and trust God's timing, the more powerful your breakthrough will be. In moments of acceleration, it can feel as though everything is moving too quickly, like doors are opening and opportunities are rushing toward you. But even in the midst of this speed, silence is your anchor. It helps you stay grounded, focused, and aligned with what God is doing, rather than being swept away by the urgency of the world around you. Silence allows you to discern which opportunities are from God and which ones are distractions. It protects your peace in the middle of divine acceleration. It's not just about external silence. Internal silence is just as important. Often, our minds are filled with worries, doubts, and thoughts about what's next. But silence within helps you clear the mental clutter, align your thoughts with God's promises, and resist the temptation to rush ahead in fear or impatience. This internal silence brings peace and focus, allowing you to hear God's voice with greater clarity. As you begin to master silence, you will notice a shift in your decision-making process. Instead of acting out of fear, pressure, or insecurity, you will begin to make decisions that are in perfect alignment with God's will for your life. You will no longer feel the need to prove yourself to others, nor will you feel the urgency to make things happen in your own strength. Silence gives you the space to rely on God completely, trusting that He is working behind the scenes and will reveal the next steps at the perfect time. One of the most profound aspects of silence is that it allows you to let go of control. In a world that values achievement and progress, letting go of control can feel uncomfortable. But silence requires you to surrender your desire to dictate the outcome and trust that God has it under control. It's in that surrender that God's power is released into your life. When you stop striving and trying to force things to happen, God can move freely in your life. His divine acceleration is not about your effort, it's about your willingness to yield to His will and let Him lead you. Through silence, you learn the art of waiting with expectation. Waiting is not a passive act, but an active posture of faith. As you wait, you are not just sitting idly, you are preparing, you are cultivating patience, building your faith, and strengthening your trust in God. And in this process, your capacity to receive the blessings God has for you increases. You become more prepared for the magnitude of the breakthrough that is coming. Silence in waiting is like the quiet before the storm, a moment of peace before the floodgates of blessings open wide. When you embrace silence, you also discover the power of stillness in the face of opposition. As you move forward, the enemy will attempt to distract you with obstacles, doubts, and challenges. He will try to provoke you into speaking too soon, reacting in frustration, or rushing the process. But silence keeps you grounded. It keeps you focused on the task at hand. Silence gives you the strength to endure, to resist temptation, and to stay aligned with God's will. In times of pressure or conflict, silence becomes your shield. It is your way of saying, I will not be moved by the opinions of others. I will not be shaken by fear or frustration. I trust that God will fight my battles for me. Silence gives you the ability to remain calm, to stay focused on the big picture, and to trust that God will bring you through any storm. In the midst of the noise and chaos of life, silence becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where you can reconnect with your Creator. It is in silence that you can hear God's voice clearly, receiving direction, comfort, and peace. And it is from this place of peace that your divine acceleration flows. God does not rush. He moves at the perfect pace, and when you embrace silence, you align yourself with His perfect timing. This is why silence is a powerful strategy. It is not about avoidance, passivity, or fear. It is about choosing God's will over your own. It's about trusting that God is in control and allowing His timing to unfold in your life. It's about protecting the sacredness of your destiny, not allowing distractions or opposition to derail you. As you move forward, keep this in mind. Every time you practice silence, you are moving one step closer to your breakthrough. Every moment of stillness, every time you choose to wait and trust God, you are positioning yourself for the manifestation of His promises. Divine acceleration does not happen by accident. It happens when you are aligned with God's will, waiting in silence, and trusting that He will reveal His plans for you at the right moment. Silence is not simply the absence of sound, it is the presence of trust. It is a declaration that you believe in God's timing, that you trust His process, and that you are willing to wait for Him to bring your breakthrough. And as you do, you will find that divine acceleration becomes not just something you experience, it becomes a natural flow in your life. Thank you so much for joining us on this divine journey today. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We want to keep spreading these life-changing insights to those who need it the most. Your support helps us reach more people, and together, we can create a wave of transformation that will ripple across the world. If you're ready to embrace the transformation that's unfolding in your life, let us know in the comments below. Remember, your breakthrough is coming, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way. Stay aligned, stay faith-filled, and see you in the next video.